Welcome to all of you. We thank you for your presence here. And of course, we are commemorating the 1974 tornado that struck Jefferson County, Indiana. That was one of 150 in a superstorm during that time that impacted many states. But of course, what an impact to Hanover College. So as we are coming together to think about those events on that fateful day 50 years ago and its lasting impact on our community, we are also honoring the people that are a part of this community, their resilience, their strength, coming together with care so that we could rise up in the face of adversity and be a campus together. So for many of us, April the 3rd, 1974 is very vivid. It is a mark that is etched into our college history. It is something that we cannot forget. With ferocious wind and devastating force, the tornado left an unmistakable imprint on our campus and surrounding communities, altering landscapes and lives. And yet, through that chaos and destruction, there did emerge hope, and in testament to the unwavering spirit of this place. And so during this time of suffering and disaster, the faculty and staff and students and community members came together and supported each other. They offered comfort and help and guidance to those who needed it. Even in the most serious situations, we found strength in our shared humanity. Standing next to each other, we began a long recovery process, rebuilding both buildings and lives. So we gathered together to remember, also looking to the future, with that spirit of resilience, of care, and determination. So we remember that strength displayed in the tornado's aftermath as a source of inspiration, something that is a legacy that's part of us today. And we have that capacity to overcome adversity, emerging strong. That stays with us. And so as we prepare to pause and remember this event, we also honor the memory of those affected, lives lost and forever altered. At exactly 3:51 p.m., we will have a moment of silence, and you will hear the campus center chime 11 times. These reflect the 11 lives that were lost in Jefferson County, Indiana, 50 years today. And so we thank you for being part of this gathering today, for your reflection, for your community, and for your remembrance. So let us honor the past, embrace the present, and look forward to a future that is filled with hope, possibility, resilience, community, and care. I'd ask that you would join me in prayer. Gracious God, as we gather in this space to honor those whose lives were lost or forever altered in the brute force of the 1974 tornado, we also give thanks for the care and resilience of Hanover College and ask that the spirit of love and strength would be with us in this place and time today. May we remember that no matter the storm, your presence is always with us. You are forever faithful as we build and grow together, whether that be in the past, today, and in the days to come. We ask that you would be with us now as we share our stories in this time together, that you would bless our fellowship with each other as we come from near and far. We ask for traveling mercies for those who have come long distance to be here today. We remember that difficult day, but we also are ensconced in your love in all times, and we know that in the strongest storm, you are our refuge and our strength and ever-present help in time of trouble. We thank you for all that you have done in this space and all that your Spirit continues to do in us. We say this in your holy name. Amen. And so I would like to introduce our president, Dr. Lake Lambert, to the podium.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you today for this remembrance. And before I go any further, I do want to begin with a special thank you today, and that is to Jeff Studd's class of 1977. Jeff, would you mind standing? Raise your hand. So Jeff is very important for this event today. It was his initiative to start this anniversary project and to preserve our history here today. Many of the photos that you see from the aftermath were taken by Jeff, and since that day, he's made it a goal to continue taking photos of the college to show the after and our continued growth throughout the years. And Jeff's photos are more than images. They also are a window into the shared experience that so many of you have, and they capture moments that are remembered, scary, in talking to Elaine, and cherished too. So thank you, Jeff, for bringing these photos to us and for helping to keep this history part of our ongoing conversation. We're thinking a lot about history at Hanover College these days as we prepare for our bicentennial in 2027. And there are many moments in that history that stand out that were transformative for this institution, that speak to our mission, to the character and the power of our culture, and our mission to transform young lives. One of those important moments in our history was the tornado of 1974. It was a defining moment in our history. It was a moment for many of you of perhaps the scariest day of your life. For others, it was a threat to the very mission of Hanover itself. And as we reflect and think about those who were here that day, the resilience and determination of those who came before us, it gives me great inspiration, even in the midst of what appear in these photos to be great, great tragedy. The support from our alumni, from neighboring communities, and various institutions and organizations played a crucial role in Hanover's ability to recover from this devastating storm. In President Horner's own words, significant events shaped the destiny of an institution of higher learning. The most significant event in the history of Hanover College occurred on April 3rd, 1974, the day the infamous tornado hit the Hanover campus. The big blow took no lives on the campus, but the property damage amounted to $10 million. The tornado was also the most cohesive event in the life of the college. It brought more unity to the campus than one could ever imagine. The team spirit was genuine and long-lasting. Everyone pulled together for the common good. There was some question as to whether the college would continue to operate. However, the resolve of the campus community and the Board of Trustees would not be denied. This resolve not only repaired the wounds that made the institution better, the college maintained its operations for the remainder of the academic year and opened on the appointed date the very next year. Despite its devastation, the tornado could not stop Hanover's faculty, staff, and students from immediately springing to action. They worked tirelessly to assess the damage, ensure the safety of all those affected, and support those in need. I can't even believe this, but Hanover had classes just 2 weeks after this. The college learned important lessons from this. It taught us the significance of being prepared, something that's ingrained in our institutional culture. It speaks to our having a strong community, something that I think we celebrate still today. And perhaps most valuable, being able to adapt and to be flexible. We've incorporated these lessons in our institutional ideology, which has made us better able to face challenges that have come since then. Challenges like the tornado, but different. A tornado that occurred just here in Jefferson County yesterday, another one that occurred on March 14th. Other disasters that we have faced, from the COVID pandemic to a hurricane. But as Hanover College approaches its bicentennial, we stand in awe of the resilience of those who were here. Those who overcame the challenges of 1974 and set a pattern for us to follow in years to come. And as we reflect on that achievement, the milestones of the past 2 centuries of our institutional history, we can be inspired by that resilience that has propelled us forward. We're confident that your resilience, leaders like President Horner's resilience, will guide us as we continue to pursue excellence in education, foster a vibrant community, and positively impact our community, state, nation, and the world. So as we reflect today, we're grateful for so many things, including your support, the support that we've received from near and far. And despite this devastation that occurred on that day, we emerged stronger and more united, bound by a shared purpose and determination to move forward. Looking back, I am grateful for the lessons learned, the bonds forged in adversity. And as we continue to move forward, I hope that our hearts will be filled by hope, knowing that we grow stronger and more resilient with each passing day. I now want to introduce the chair of our Board of Trustees, Ms. Elaine Beadle.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I will tell you that just thinking about this, I was a class of 74. Okay, all my classmates of 74, stand up. Look at you. Look at you. Thank you for coming back. We do have our 50th reunion coming up in October. But to think it happened 50 years ago and the memories that we all have, and I got to tell you, as I started thinking through this, emotions started coming back. And so that may happen to me again today. Who are the students, who were others that were students here but not the class of 74? You can stand up too. Oh my gosh, it's the rest of the audience almost. Wow. Wow. And now, who are the rest of you that may be staff or faculty that were here for Hanover? Stand up. There you go. You got to get up there. There you go. Look at that. Okay. So I'm going to sort of kick this off and tell you some of my memories and where I was, but then I want to invite all of you to do the same, and we'll bring it all back together somehow, right? So, as I said, I was a FIMU. This is that house behind me. So I'm, as I mentioned, going to talk a little bit about where I was and what we did and that type of thing. When the announcement came out last week, one of our, we've got kind of 13 or 14 of us that graduated together from the FIMU house. We had this email chain, and so one sent it around saying, hey, what are your memories? And I think the majority, I think 11 or 12 people actually answered with where they were. And it's kind of interesting that we had these memories, vivid memories in many cases, dim memories in other cases, but there's a lot of consistency between it, which makes me believe that I didn't make up some of the stuff that I'm going to share with you. We were probably a week to 10 days before spring break, so we were getting right to the end of the winter term. So on May 3rd, I, along with all of you, class of 74, we were getting ready for our senior banquet that was to be put on by the Alumni Association right here that evening, if you all recall that. My class never got that senior banquet. I just want to put that out there. I had just gotten out of the shower, which, reflecting back, was good that I had, timing is everything, had just gotten out because the showers actually caved in at the FIMU house. And I was walking down the hall, somewhere along, going back to my room. Someone yells out, I hear a train, get downstairs, we have a tornado. Now, I wasn't sure exactly where that came from, but in my little chain of emails that came back, Mary Fry, if you remember Mary Fry Denninger, was in the room across. She said that she was sort of listening to the radio, heard the train, told everybody to get down. Pam Pearson Daly was upstairs running down from the 3rd floor and pulled open the door on the 2nd floor to say, tornado, get downstairs. Somehow we got downstairs, at least most of us. We got downstairs, sitting kind of around the wall, and listening to this clamor going on and what's happening. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, we probably lost a few windows, maybe something like that. Oh, but what I forgot to say is when I did get out into the stairwells to come running down, all I could see around the window was this swirling dark gray leaves, twigs, just coming right there at the window. The tornado was there. I mean, it was on top of us. So we were so fortunate. There was an angel looking out over this entire campus, I'm convinced. Again, got downstairs. We're sitting around waiting. When it all got kind of quiet and stopped, we all got up and kind of walked out. And as you know, the houses, there's about 6 steps to go up to the door, which I think the door was gone. And we walked out, and you're seeing what you see here. I mean, a war zone, basically. And I do remember, I was in my fuzzy orange bathrobe, if I forgot to say that. Just getting out of the shower, my fuzzy orange bathrobe, walking outside, but literally turning around and seeing the top of your house gone. I mean, it was one of those shocking situations, and we all had it. I mean, it wasn't like I was the only one. So the 3rd floor was obviously the dorm room. The only thing left standing were the concrete block stairwells. That's an important factor for you to remember when you hear another story coming up. So again, seeing all of the bunk beds, mangled, hanging off the roof, pink bedspreads everywhere. Every one of the beds up in that rack room had a pink bedspread on it. And they were around here, but they were as far as the Fideout house. They found pink bedspreads in the trees. So that's, I think, something that everyone has a vision in their head of all of that. Trees were uprooted. I know when we came back spring term, the one thing that we said that there was more sky on campus than we had ever noticed before. Huge trees uprooted. And as you can see in a lot of these pictures as well. Looked like a war zone. The Theta House, which sat just behind us, and we think that might be a picture of the Theta House. Do we have any Thetas here to confirm that? That's not the Theta House?
No, I think that's the back of the house.
Oh, okay. Well, the Theta House was right west, as it is today, of the FIMU house, and it had some damage as well. Not quite as extensive as losing a whole floor, but it had damage as well. We somehow went back into the house. My room wasn't bad. I mean, there was some window broken and some things kind of strewn around. It seemed to be the rooms on the east side of the house that had total windows blown out. And again, Mary Fry, right across the hall, lost her IS, her independent study, her purse, clothing, everything going out the window. But one thing that she said in this little email, again, was that she had a potted plant. The actual pot was sitting right where it had been sitting. The plant was gone. You know, you think, how does this happen? How do these things happen? But the independent studies, good news, bad news, did mine fall semester, so mine was done. But there were a lot of seniors that hadn't quite gotten around to it. Remember I said we had maybe a week to 10 days until it was going to be due. So a lot of work was going on with that, and some people actually lost it. And sometimes the faculty member said, that's okay. We'll let it go. We'll figure out a different way to give your grade. One in particular was given the option of, you can keep working on it, you can finish it up and you'll get an A because the faculty member had been working with her on this, or don't turn it in, I'll give you a B. She said that was an easy decision. And then the joke started going around it, okay, how many of those fraternity boys out there told their faculty member that their independent study was lost because it was at the Phi Mu house being typed or being proofread, so it was gone with the wind. So we had one of our sorority sisters in Classic Hall, a chamber choir practice. Another was in Goodrich working on her independent study. She was a bio major. She said she was feeding aspirin to rats to create ulcers, all that kind of stuff. And they sheltered in place, obviously. Now, getting out of Goodrich was difficult because a tree was blocking the door when it was all over. But both of them expressed the fact that as they approached back coming down the street and seeing the Phi Mu house, how much fear and shock and concern for all of us that they knew were in the house at the time. And I can't even imagine what those feelings must have been like. So as was mentioned, we were just so lucky that no one on campus was critically injured. No one could get to campus because of all the downed trees on Lucinabal Drive, and that Hanover itself the town had been hit. The mother of one of our sisters, though, lives in Columbus, Ann King Cox. Her mom came trugging in. She took names and phone numbers with the intent of going back home and being able to call our parents to tell them that we were okay. Now, Mark Levitt isn't here, right? I vividly remember, after I was dressed again, gotten up to my room, got some clothes on, I wasn't in my pink bathrobe, coming downstairs to go out, and Mark Levitt and Mary Beth come walking up. Mark was supposed to be the speaker at the alumni banquet, at the alumni senior banquet that evening, and so he just happened to be on his way coming. Now, did I dream that? I don't think so, but can anybody tell me they saw him too? So I don't know, but Mark shows up in all the strangest places, right? But I think he really was there. That evening, we spent the entire night in the basement hallway of Donner Hall. There were still threats that more bad weather was coming, and we couldn't stay in the house. And I will tell you as another aside, some of the fraternity boys who were, or just gentlemen on campus, I should call them gentlemen on campus, kind of stood guard over our house because it was wide open and people could get in. Maybe some of you are here that did that for us, and if that's the case, thank you, because we remember that happening as well. But we were in the basement of Donner. I did have a trip to the Madison Hospital with my little sister in the sorority at the time, who had really sort of a panic attack. She was from Louisville. All the stories were that Louisville got hit really bad, and she was just beyond herself. So had a ride down there in the ambulance. They brought me back. We're still in the basement of the Donner, in the hallway there. So the next day, I had an opportunity to sit down with Dean Quilling at the time to basically say, The FIMUs want to stay together. We know we've got to find a place for us to live. Our suggestion is we live in the long gym. More on that later. That same next day, right out here, we were all told to gather. We were all there. Remember, you can all see Dr. Horner still standing up on the ledge in that corner right there. And basically, saying to anybody who could stay, if there were any students who felt they could stay and help clean up, please do that, but otherwise, get home any way that you can. And we'll call and let you know when to come back. So we all did that. There was, many cars that people did have on campus were damaged. Didn't work, but those who did have cars that worked, many of us got to catch rides that way. I'm from Batesville, Indiana. I got to Versailles with a ride from one of the guys who lived there. Made a phone call to my parents from a payphone, I think, and my mom and my sister came to pick me up, and that's how I got home. And I would tell you, I don't know how people do this, when you get through a situation like that in shock, you just kind of stand tight. I got in the car and I broke down. And it was the first time I think I cried the whole time that this happened, because it was just overwhelming at that point in time. And actually, they had tried to call, because obviously the day before was the tornado. This was the day after, and they had no idea. So they were trying to call, and of course, phone lines weren't working here, no electricity, as was said, and we don't have cell phones 50 years ago. So they had no idea what was happening. But after it was said, 2 weeks later, we get the call, back to class. Now, some people took advantage of having an extra long spring break down in Florida and a few other places, and you all probably heard stories about that too. Others of us were just at home. But winter term was obviously cut short, and we came back for spring term. So when we get back, we were assigned to live at Long Gym. If you remember, that was right across from Sorority Court. The Horner Center now sort of replaces that. It was taken down because of that. So when you walk in, that's where the gym is, basketball, volleyball, practice softball, whatever there. To the left was the locker rooms, so bathrooms, showers. To the right was the dance room. We come back, and the dance room is filled with bunk beds with a chest of drawers kind of in between each one of them for us to use. And our understanding is someone donated those. Some furniture company heard of what happened and donated all those. And what I'd like to tell people, we had the largest walk-in closet you would ever imagine, because all we had were coat racks next to each other, lined up the whole length of the room, and we each had our own little space there. Really easy to borrow clothing. I mean, you could just kind of say, what color do I want today? But we all kind of enjoyed, I think, that experience. We lived there till graduation. The Thetas, I think, were able to be placed around in different dorms because they couldn't live in their house either. But I think all the other living units were at that point able to be to house the students. But it's one of those things that you live together, even closer than when we had been living together in the house, obviously, and it all worked out, and I think some strong memories came out of that as well. Spring term being one class made this all a little bit easier. Would you all agree that we only had to focus on one? Mine was medieval history. That was kind of that, if you got lucky enough to not have to do anything spring break, that was the fun one to take, with Dr. Trout. Dr. Trout's house got hit. And so I do remember as a class, we went over there to kind of clean up some of all that little glass that was everywhere and tried to help do that kind of thing as well. Graduation was a beautiful day. Do you remember that, class of 74? It was a beautiful day. Now here's where you're going to check my facts. I distinctly remember as our procession is going out to the point, because we were able to have it on the point, we actually had to divert around a big tree that was about this big, totally uprooted. Do you guys remember that? Just shake your head yes, make me feel good. But I definitely remember going this way and then just curving out and around and going. And, that's really sort of symbolic. I mean, it's kind of evidence of the power of nature and what we had just gone through. But also that the campus community had overcome this devastation and that we were just making the best of it and we were almost back to normal and we could celebrate graduation that day. So those are some of my memories. Hopefully they're sort of on point. But now I want to actually first ask Patty Hopkins Lansinger and Sandy Schwartz Freeman, wherever they're sitting, to come up because they've got a story that needs to be shared as well. And then others start thinking of your little story.
Thank you, Elaine. And I'm really sad about the banquet we didn't get to attend because I know Elaine would have really rocked that night. I don't know about us. But our story is, gosh, you just talking made me kind of get chills. Sandy and I were ed majors, and we had stayed up all night studying for a test. That probably doesn't happen anymore. But we stayed long hours preparing for some ed test, and we're taking a nap that afternoon.
Well, before that, we were laying out in the sun.
Oh, yeah. It was a beautiful day off and on, and yet funny greenish sky from time to time. So Sandy was in her bathing suit, and I was in my bathing suit, but had kind of like an oversized shirt over it, and we decided we better take a nap. So do college students still take naps? We did. And I heard a fire engine in my dream. You know how you can hear something and you wake up and there is some reality to it. But it wasn't a fire engine, it was a tornado siren. So I was on a top bunk looking out toward the Theta House, 3rd floor, Phi Mu House, and I couldn't see the Theta House. I could only see gray mass. I didn't see twigs or anything. It was just gray, swirling stuff. Sandy was on a top bunk at the other end, and I just yelled, "Sandy, quick." So she jumped out of bed, I jumped out of bed, and our room was also on the 3rd floor. There were 2 rooms at each end on the 3rd floor. So she started to run.
I'll hold it. Do you want me to hold it?
She started to run for our room, naturally thinking, let's get out of the dorm room. But I said, no, Sandy, and I pulled her into the stairwell.
I don't think I was quite awake yet.
Well, I'm glad that you did what I said this time anyway. And so I pulled her into the stairwell, and as soon as I did, we started to run down the steps, but we couldn't because the glass window just shattered, and there was swirling glass. And as soon as we got outside the door just slammed shut from the pressure. And so we stood in the corner right outside the door, screaming. Remember how hard to scream? In the stairwell, and just screaming as we heard a train go over.
On the landing.
Yeah, we were on the top floor. We didn't go down at all. And the stairwell's made of cement block. That's a good thing for you to remember if you're ever encountering a tornado. So we made it. And we did have guardian angels protecting us because otherwise, if we'd gone to our room, everything in our room was either gone or destroyed. Sandy remembers opening the door on the top floor and seeing nothing. I just remember going downstairs, and the other Phi Mu's were down in the basement, and of course, they wondered where we were, and especially Susie, Sandy's twin sister, was glad to see us. Just so many funny, quirky things that tornadoes do. We had a fish bowl with 2 fish in our room on the 3rd floor, and we found it in sorority court, and one fish was gone, but the other one was alive. So we carried that little fish bowl with us everywhere, even to the basement of Donner, and it died by the next morning from shock, I'm sure. I found a picture that we had on the wall, and The glass wasn't broken, but between the glass and the picture was just stuff, just insulation, just particles that had been forced up under there. Of course, the pink bedspreads everywhere. We found some clothing that we tried to bring with us. My husband, fiance then, was in Louisville and finishing law school, and he heard, of course, Louisville had been hit, and then he heard Hanover, so he jumped in the car and ran up and couldn't get through the entrance, whichever direction that is. But some townies gave him a lift to Lucina Ball, where then he had to climb over trees to come find me and make sure I was okay. And he would talk on and on about how long his story is, but not tonight, John, not today. Because it's about us today, okay? So, of course, we've been close friends ever since because we bonded for sure in that stairwell. And my car was parked in front of sorority court, little cheap car, but it had a 2x4 through one tire and out the other side, you know. It wasn't drivable, of course, and you would have thought they would have totaled it, but no, in those days they just fixed it back up, and it never was the same, though. Glass every once in a while would filter down, and, you know, it was just, I taught 5th grade for many years, and I would always tell my tornado story to my students, not to scare them. And, oh, their eyes were bright and, you know, worried when I told it because, of course, Indiana, we get these warnings a lot. But I told it because the safest place to be if you can't get to a basement or an inner room is cement block walls. And we're living testimony that that's true. Good, safe place to be. What else, Sandy?
Okay, though Patty pretty much told everything, but a few things I remember is, well, first of all, I didn't have any clothes except my bathing suit, and my hair was up in 4 orange juice cans like we used to do, and that's all I had. So somebody must have given us clothes.
Oh, yeah, somebody gave us clothes.
Anyway, but I do remember that, like, several weeks later, all my clothes were gone because we lived up there too. Somebody had brought back from, I think it was from North Vernon, but I'm not, some other town. They had found my sweater that had my Phi Mu pin and my Phi Delta pin from my husband. And they brought it to the Phi Mu house, and then we figured out it was mine. So I still have my 2 pins. I don't think Patty does.
No, my pin was on my little sister's sweater, but John's pin was gone with the wind. He still looks for it in antique shops, and if you ever find one, it's a really nice Phi Delta pin.
I totally remember opening the door and seeing nothing but floor and sky. I remember going outside and seeing nothing but trees uprooted and the great big huge. I mean, it looked like what I think of being in a war zone. It looked like a bomb had hit everything. And I vividly remember spending the night on the floor of Donner basement.
With the
And we were really in shock, I think. I mean, it was, yeah. And I remember, let's see what else I was going to say. The next day when we gathered with Dr. Horner, I remember crying at that. It's like he turned into all of our fathers, and he made us feel like we were going to be okay. That's how I felt anyway. And I remember him saying that Hanover was going to be okay too. And it is. And what else?
In the gym, when we lived in the gym.
Oh, I was going to say that.
In those days, seniors didn't have hours, but underclassmen still did, unless you lived in the gym spring term after the tornado.
I was going to say that. I do remember walking into the gym and seeing that we were going to be okay because of all that, and I think it was Barrett's furniture, probably. The donated furniture and where we were living. That spring term was actually a really fun time living all together in the same room like that. I remember walking to the showers, and I don't remember what class I had that term, but yeah.
So,
Anyway,
I think that's good.
Patty did a good job. She She's
John?
our spokesman.
John came back the next day, he went to Louisville and got my parents' big, giant Capri station wagon, and we put anything in it we could find, clothing that we'd found. But even after washing, we could never wear anything. It was just ground into the fabric was stuff from a tornado, I guess.
The other thing I remember on the way back to Louisville, because Susie and I went with Patty, because our parents were in Florida vacationing. I don't think they even knew we were in a tornado then. I remember we looked terrible, and I remember once we got out of the campus and got on the road and stuff, it was like, it seemed like a different world because life was going on, and it was like nobody seemed to know that we had just been through a tornado, so that was weird too.
Yeah. But we
So-
made it. We're still
Yeah.
good buddies.
And, oh yeah, I'm sick.
Thanks, Sandy and Patty. And Nancy Burris, why don't you come up and share? Nancy is the daughter of Ralph Burris, our registrar when we were all here.
Robert McClune was the registrar. He was the head of the business office.
That's what I said, right? No, sorry. Come on. I'm sorry.
So I'm a faculty brat, or I was during the time of the tornado. So I am the daughter of Ralph Burris, who was passed on, unfortunately, but he was the head of business affairs at the time of the tornado. He did write a little bit about the tornado, 6 pages. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it. But I will read just a little bit of it because it might be interesting to you. And I realize that there are many people, faculty members, and others who did write extensive accounts, and they're all really interesting to read if you want to read them. Okay, so I do want to say that just to say something obvious, the tornado is still inside me, as it is, and I could hear it in the voice of the 2 students who were just up here. It's in us, and when we start to talk about it, it comes back. Yesterday, when there was a tornado warning, it certainly came back to me. I live in Connecticut. There are just fewer tornado warnings, not no tornado warnings, but just a lot fewer than in Indiana. So when I'm here and something like this happens, well, it brings it back. Fortunately, everything was okay. But certainly is the case, and it's with me. And I'll ask a kind of rhetorical question now to you regarding having the tornado still in you. How many of you have, for lack of a better word, tortured your children and your nieces with tornado stories? Maybe again and again and again and again. My children have heard tornado stories more than they would like. It's almost become family folklore because they'll tell a story and I'll say, well, it wasn't quite like that. It's just evolved a little bit. But my children, fortunately, know for sure where to go in a tornado, because throughout their lifetime, if I walked into a building, I've said to them, oh, there's a basement here. It's a good place for your tornado if you need a dormitory or wherever they're going to be. Or, wait a minute, there's an inside bathroom here. That's what you've got. You don't have anything else. And that has extended to where's the fire escape and other possible disasters that could happen to them. Okay, so I'm going to move on to read to you briefly from my father's account. Again, it's 6 pages. I'm not going to read that. So one of them is a pretty frightening event that many people will know about, either partially or in full. And then the other is sort of a heartwarming event, which I think a lot of you will definitely relate to. So my father says he was in the ad building along with Jane's father and others, and those are plenty of stories there too. But I'm going to talk about after he leaves there, and he stops by the clinic briefly because some people, including my father, were trying to help a young woman who had been injured in the ad building. And he moves in the direction of our home, which is on campus. It's on File Street, actually. And he says, and I quote, "I then went running, jumping, ducking, and skirting trees in the direction of my house. My house is located in such a position that I passed our water tower and maintenance building on my way home. I quickly noticed that the water tower had come down on the very end of the maintenance building where the time clock was located, and realized that some 40 maintenance men and maids, as he referred to them, could have been, and probably were, there a few minutes before 4 p.m. their normal clocking out time. I could see at least 2 maintenance trucks were sticking out from under the stem, quote unquote, of the tank, and they were all the trucks were 2 feet high. I could not see any bodies in any of them. So with that little bit, I had to stop reading for a minute because it occurred to me that there was a lot of quick thinking and cautious thinking from a lot of people on campus that likely prevented many more deaths, including possibly these 40 people. Moving on from there, the heartwarming event is when, after he confirms that he sees no bodies, he goes on to say, and it was only then that I looked toward my house, which formerly would have been obscured by evergreens around the maintenance building, and the 62 trees, which formerly were in my yard, and saw that my house was still standing. More importantly, I could see my wife and my 15-year-old daughter. I am that 15-year-old daughter. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, who else would like to share something this afternoon? Where you were, what was happening? Oh, please.
I'll be real quick. I'm another faculty brat, and I think this is a testament to Hanover College and how it endears itself, because we have a faculty brats group on Facebook. The majority of us are not alums of Hanover College, but it's kind of the alma mater of our heart. We are regularly sharing stories, and of course, I don't think not everybody can assign a day to the end of their childhood, but for me, April 3rd, 1974 was that. Not in necessarily a sad way. I was 14 years old. It was time. But my memories of a childhood here were green and leafy. The trees, I know those of you who are on campus, it's beautiful now. You know, there's a good reason why they say the beauty of Hanover College. But back then, they were towering. There was even a tree that was over by Parker that little kids, we could walk into. It was so big. So losing the trees, of course, were a hardship. It was a very frightening day. My father was a bike rider, and he had ridden his bike to the ad building, parked it outside, went outside to check on it that day, saw the tornado, ran inside, screamed to people in the ad building, then had the presence of mind to call us at home. Of course, his voice was so changed because of the adrenaline that I picked up the phone and thought it was just some man calling to warn us about the tornado. My mother, my grandmother, who unfortunately was visiting from New York, and my older brother and I went to the basement where we wrote it out, watched the tornado lift a tree from outside our home, then walked out to the aftermath, the water tower being gone, being able to see all the way across Hanover College to where Finnegan's was gone, the grocery store, Southwestern schools. That was the last day of school for the majority of us, though. Interestingly, elementary school kids had to finish their school year, so Hanover College offered classroom space. So if you were in elementary school at Southwestern, you finished your school year at Classic in the school. Fortunately for me, junior high and high school students, we were done for the year. So, but anyway, the faculty kids, we remember when the college students left, the National Guard came in, and we were given, each family was given 2-gallon jugs, and you would come to in front of the campus center where daily the National Guard would give you 2 gallons of water, because there was no water for about 2 weeks. There was no electricity for almost a month. We took our first showers in Wiley because for some reason there was a system where the water was collected on the roof and the shower still worked. So after about a week, my parents said, okay, we can go over and have a shower in the dorm. I also, faculty brats will remember that summer was the year we weren't allowed to go barefoot because there was always metal and wood working its way up out of the ground. We will also remember Mrs. Horner, who was so concerned about the loss of trees, and it was about 80% of the trees, particularly in Happy Valley, that they came up with this scheme that they were going to paint all the faculty homes. And at the time, close to 90% of the faculty lived on campus. So those white stately homes were all painted different colors with different trims that were Williamsburg colors. So it was great sport for faculty kids to walk around campus and report back what the Calkins house is going to be blue, and this is how it's going to. So hopefully it made the loss of trees less. A few quick things. President Nixon actually flew over in a helicopter in a tour of those devastated towns. I'm a television reporter. You can see a couple of the stories I produced over the years about this particular tornado. The college has luckily has linked to my YouTube page, so you can watch them. They're not the greatest resolution, but they're still there, and they may strike a few memories. I will also note along with this student who took pictures, Frank Baker, who was the head of the publicity office, took a number of pictures. Dr. Bloom took a number of pictures. So a lot of things exist, though very little television footage. I have a little bit on one of the pieces that I did. So anyway, welcome back home, particularly if you haven't been here since '74. We're still here and we're still beautiful. So.
Yes, we did lose lots of trees, and I think many of you probably remember too, if you looked over into the valley, it looked like matchsticks just broken over the whole area, and that was for years after. You would see that as well. Okay, who else would like to kind of share something? There you go. Whoop.
Hi, my name's Don Strunk, and I'm the class of '77. I was a freshman that year. I ran 4 years of cross country and track here at Hanover, and that day we were out on the track having practice. Practice had just ended. I looked up, saw the sky was kind of a little weird, going in two different directions, and I told a friend of mine, Gary Green, I said, I'm heading back to the dorm. Well, I broke a track record that day, but it wasn't recorded, because I went all the way from the track to Crow Hall in about 48 seconds, okay? So I did a record-breaking quarter that day. I went to the third floor as fast as I could. I grabbed my roommate, and I said, we got to get down in the basement. So about that time, we went to the end of Crow. I saw the water tower go down on the maintenance building, and we took, I don't know how many steps are in between floors, probably about 10. We took them one step at a time. So we were jumping from landing to landing. Got down in the basement, and that's when we heard a train noise, and we felt the building vibrate and shake. And I thought, oh boy, if this crumbles in, I'm right by the doorway. So like if you're in an earthquake, you're supposed to be in a doorway. So I'm thinking, well, at least, my roommate and I might be okay. And it only took a few seconds. It seemed like longer than that, but just a few seconds. And when we came back out, like you said, it was like a bomb that exploded, and there was like wires popping, wires were down. So that was kind of crazy. It was scary, and we went around trying to find out if there was anybody we could help, and everybody seemed to be okay. And I remember Dr. Horner saying, we need people to guard the entrances and stuff. I was at the Fiji house, so I was one of the guards that was down here in the town. I wouldn't let your boyfriend in, sorry. He had to go around the other way or something like that. So we were on guard duty, and that's what we did. And we stuck around a couple days afterwards to help clean up, and it was a lifetime experience. That's why I'm here today, because how often does this happen? So I thought I would come and like to listen to the stories and just share some stories with you all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue McClue. In '74, I was married to Jim Jacob, and we lived out in a little community called Holly Hill Estates, south of the high school. So I had a little different perspective than you that were here on campus, because I was sitting watching The Price is Right, remember, in the afternoon in those days, And all of a sudden, there was a notice saying, by the way, kind of offhandedly, there's a tornado heading to Hanover College in Hanover and Madison. So I grabbed the kids, they were 4 and 1 at that time, and we got in the hallway, and I heard the train, and it went through. And when after the sound had died down, I went and looked out the window. And you talk about the gray, there was a huge, massive gray cloud. I never saw any funnel cloud per se. It was just this big gray mass. Fortunately, I had very little damage. I lost a shed. The dog got taken away. We did find her 3 weeks later, but she was never the same after that. But it was a whole different experience. My husband at that time worked at Madison Chemical. It took him 3 hours to get home. And fortunately, like I say, we didn't have much damage, a few limbs and stuff like that, but I will never forget it. It was an experience that is ingrained up here and in here. So welcome back.
Come on up, Linda. Linda's got a story to tell.
I am Linda Hobbs LaCour. I was a senior 80 Pi, so I was next door to the FIMU house. And it was, as everyone said, a beautiful spring day. So we were working hard out at 80 Pi Beach. Somebody had bought a kiddie pool and blown it up, so we were out there. And I remember lying on my back and watching how quickly the clouds were going across the sky. But, you know, you're, 21 years old, and you're like, eh. So it started clouding over, and we went inside, and we had a group of pledges. And to this day, I don't know who the pledges were. If you're out there and you were a pledge, okay, great. They needed to go to the nursing home, and I don't know where the nursing home was, but I loaded them up in my car, and for some reason, I was going to go on Lucina Ball Drive. And I got everybody in there, and somebody said, I've got to mail a letter. So we go over to the post office. Well, about the time I pull out of that little drive and take a left, I hear this siren, and I thought, that's odd. I've never heard a siren this time of day. And I didn't pay any attention to anything going on until we started to pull into the post office. And a professor came running out, and unfortunately, I don't remember who the professor was, and he's trying to get us to come into the post office, because all of a sudden, I look over this direction, there's this huge green-gray cloud, and it's rolling, and it's spitting out boards and trees, and so we try to open the car doors, and they won't open. And it starts picking my car up and putting it down. I had a 69 Malibu, the green machine, as we lovingly called it, up and down. And between the post office and I think it was a funeral home, maybe it still is, I don't know. Okay, there was this tree. It was a big tree, and they had paved around it, pulled the tree up, the wind did, ripped it apart, and threw it back down. And I remember saying something about, I think we need to pray. I don't know what we were saying. I also realized I had my foot on the brake the whole time, you know. Finally, it was over, and we get out. My dad had a power line construction company, so I knew we had to stay away from all the power lines. We're trying to pick our way back. The weird thing is, my car, the only damage my car had was there was some straw that was embedded in the body of it, just sticking in the metal, and that was it. So we go picking our way back. We were pretty relieved to see the 80 Pi house in one spot or in one piece, because so far it wasn't looking good for the rest of the sorority houses, you know, Theta House, FIMU House. Two of the really bright spots that day. A few minutes after this, I'm from Brownstown, Indiana, along with Becky Tabor Wakefield, who is here today also, and we've gone to school since we were in kindergarten, all the way through. I'm standing outside the house looking around, and two of our friends, our classmates from Brownstown Central High School, show up, just checking to see if I guess we were in one piece. My parents managed to get down here from Brownstown. Somehow my dad talked his way around the guards. I didn't ask a lot of questions about that. And like Ann King's mother, they took a list of people to call. And my dad always laughed because he'd called somewhere way up in northern Indiana. And this little boy answered and said, "What's she done now?" And he's like, "I think I need to talk to your parents." The other indelible memory, and Sandy Freeman and I have talked about this, was Dr. Horner. I mean, he was like the man. And that next day we have the meeting, and I was so astonished because he shows up in tennis shoes and a letter jacket. I personally felt like Dr. Horner probably slept in his suit because I'd never seen him in anything but a suit, you know? And he's like a real boy, you know? He's a real person. So anyway, that was Hanover.
Would anyone else like to share some thoughts? Okay, yes, come on, Stan. From the faculty point of view.
Yeah.
And one of the brats.
It's fun to hear all these stories. I've heard some of them, but a lot of them I've heard for the first time. And so I think we're really enjoying that. But when the tornado occurred, I had gone from the geology department to home. We just built a new house on File Street at the west end of campus. And my wife was in Spain, so I had to go home and check on my kids, and 4 of them were there. And so we went to the basement and heard the train. The house creaked like we were in a sailing ship on the ocean. And there was just a sound of glass breaking time and time again. And then it was quiet. So my daughter Molly was one of the persons in the house, and she may give you some of her perspective. But anyway, I want to let you know what happened the day after. Well, right away, my good friend Walt Morrill, who was a librarian, and the library was a brand new library at the time, you remember. And so he was able to get word to Madison to call our parents, to tell them that we were okay and we'd survived. And the next day, my parents appeared with an Airstream trailer. So we had maybe about the only bathroom in town. But then Walt Morrill was very concerned because the copper roof in the library had just blown away. And the third floor would look like a swimming pool with all the water, and it was starting to leak onto the books. And so we were trying to spread plastic over the books on the second floor. But we had to get rid of the water on the third floor. So I grabbed a sledgehammer and actually just chopped a hole through the bricks on the third floor to drain the swimming pool. Okay, and then one more story. The copper roof ended up in Happy Valley. And so we knew that had to get removed. It couldn't stay there. And so I was a scoutmaster. So we got the Boy Scout troop to do their service project. And so for the next couple of weeks, with ropes and pickup trucks, we got all of the copper roofing out of the Happy Valley, except one that was up in a tree. There was maybe the only tree still standing in Happy Valley, and there was a copper roof. We couldn't get that, but we took care of the copper roof. So basically, that's my story, and I don't know what you have, Dad.
Well, I'm just one of the other faculty brats that happened to be here. I was 10. I was one of the fortunate ones that got to go to school in Classic Hall. And I had 3 older brothers who, my parents being academia people, sent them to Ohio to live with family members, and they got to finish out school as well. So my little brother and I would walk to Classic Hall in the mornings. I think we only had school in the mornings. I think they set kind of a time aside for us, and we'd go to school in the mornings, and we finished the year doing that. And so that is very vivid in my mind. I remember really well this, but in color. So just all these colors that, you talk about the pink bed sheets and just all these vibrant colors that scattered around in what trees were standing, and then obviously around the buildings. The other thing I remember is they must have opened the campus center for dinner, like meals, because I remember until the Airstream and my grandma got here to cook, we had some meals in the campus center. So just, I think the thing that sticks out the most is the community and how people pulled together, and the college opened to the elementary school kids to come in, and had their meals here for some of us that had no power or water or anything like that. But like some of the rest of you, it'll always be here. And tornadoes, I will never, every house I've built has had a basement. And I think that is, I felt safe in our basement, and we were safe. And just anytime now sirens go off, or I hear I'm calling people, I'm like, get in the basement. And, that's where my safety is. But community was just amazing, and that's what sticks out too, as well.
Hi, when I was here, I was Susan Tucker, and better? My brother was a senior, I was a freshman. Cy Tucker, if you know him, we were Tucks and Little Tucks. Yep. And I was in Donner. My roommate and I were frantically working on papers. And the dorm director would say, ladies, we need to get down to the basement. And finally, the third one was, get down to the basement now. And my roommate and I were like, oh, okay. We finally got down to the basement. We got in the shelter, and just as we got in the shelter, the pressure just slammed that door behind us. I don't remember a train, but I do remember hearing trees continually hitting the ground. Well, when we finally got out, we both went upstairs. We had no window. We had no typewriters. Our papers were in our typewriters. No bed covers. Everything had blown out that one single window. Well, of course, my brother was at the Beta House, and I thought, oh my gosh, little sister has to go check on her brother. So I scrambled over trees and bushes and debris and got all the way down to the Beta House, and there's my brother in the basement of the Beta House with a beer in one hand and a peanut butter sandwich in the other hand. And I'm like, you're okay? Yeah. I said, okay. He had watched out the window of the Beta House the water tower corkscrew up in the air and fall down. But we were both okay. My parents at that point were in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My dad was working on a doctorate's up there. What they heard on the news that night was, we have the news that a small college in southern Indiana has been totally destroyed. Both of their children were here, and they had no way of getting in touch with anybody. My grandmother was in Louisville. She had no way of getting a message to them. So for about 48 hours, they didn't know, if they had two kids or not. Finally got a message to them, and that we were both okay. My brother went with his buddy Mark Nichols to Little Rock, Arkansas. I took off with 3 other people in an MG Midget to Daytona Beach. And I must say, when we came back on campus 2 weeks later, it was amazing. And it took me about 20 years to realize how amazing that was. In 2 weeks, this entire campus was back, and everybody was back. But like all of you, when I see that sky get that greenish, brownish gray, I'm going to be in the basement.
Well, it's probably time. Okay, one more? Come on up. then we'll cut this and we'll have time. We've got refreshments for everyone as well, so we'll have time to talk.
I'm Horace Sambrick, class of 75, and I'd been out on the track behind the Fidel House running right before the tornado, and I'd come inside and was up in the shower on the second floor, and it brings me to a delusion that I've had now for 50 years. I didn't realize. I thought at the time that the tornado hit, I was the cleanest person on campus, but apparently Elaine was right there in that same status. I didn't see her at the time. But I was convinced that my entire fraternity was trying to play a joke on me because I was, the lights were flipping on and off a little bit like that. And I go downstairs, I've got my towel on. I go down to the basement, and for those of you who have seen Bruce Breeden stand up, he was called Bear at the time, and he's still a big bear of a guy. And he's always part of my tornado story because I went down to the basement, and Bear was part of our cook team, and we had a female cook named Ernie, who was a little tiny thing. And she had a hold of Bear around his arm, and she was literally squeezing the life out of his arm. And I thought, they can't fake this. And about that time, I heard the tornado go over.
Well, thank you, everyone. I know we all have memories and probably different things in different places that we were. And I'm just glad you're all back here and that we all were blessed that day, that, again, that angel was looking over all of campus because we were so fortunate to be able to survive that and now be ready to celebrate, get this 200 years for this college. Pretty amazing, pretty amazing. So make sure you put that on your calendars for 2027 when we saw just a few years from now. But if we can get through the tornado 50 years ago, we can get through the next century as well. So thank you for coming. We've got refreshments. Please enjoy.